IVM.
Welcome to Police Chowki, a special limited series on your favorite public policy podcast, All Things Policy. This series will take you behind the khaki uniform, beyond the flashing red beacon, and into the heart of the functioning of the Indian police force. We cast a critical eye on the role and function of the police in the Indian democracy, from the silent persistence of paperwork and meticulous investigation to risky counterterrorism efforts and policing in conflict zones. We explore the need for police reform and accountability in the system. Each episode brings you a comprehensive exploration of a unique facet of policing, illuminated by the insights of a former IPS officer who has lived the life behind the badge. So join us every Monday morning as we take you into the complex world of Police Chowki.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Police Chowki. I'm your host Shrikrishna Upadhyaya, and today we're going to be talking about the problem of missing persons in India. The National Crime Records Bureau, or the NCRB, keeps statistics on the number of missing people in the country. The latest statistics available as of 2021 show that around 3.42 lakh people are missing and untraced in this country. And out of this, around 87% or 2.98 lakh were adults, and the remaining 13% were children. In fact, one would assume, and at least I did when I was researching for this, that the proportion of children among missing persons must be higher. But actually, that's not the case. In fact, the proportion of children has been falling over the years. For instance, it accounted for the 17% of the total missing tally in 2016, but it dropped to around 13% in 2021. However, what is concerning for us is that the data is showing that the number of missing women in the tally of missing person is actually rising over the years. In 2021, 2/3 of all the untraced missing people happen to be women. As far as where do these missing people emerge out of, we have to look at few states like West Bengal, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, and Delhi, because these states account for half the total of missing persons in the country. The NCRB data also looks at something called the recovery rate, which is basically the number of people found in a said year divided by the total number of missing persons. The national average recovery rate is 52.9%. Some states are doing well, like the state of Kerala and Telangana stand at around 86% and 85.3% in terms of recovery rate respectively. However, states like Punjab and Delhi have very poor recovery rate at around 30 odd percentage. Where are missing people found? Around 2/3 of missing persons are actually traced in states of Assam, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Himachal Pradesh, and Tamil Nadu. These statistics are I'm quoting from a report by The Print based on the NCRB data, and I'll plug it into the show notes if you want to take a look as well. The numbers that I have read out to you show that missing persons is a very serious problem which requires policy measures by the state as well as by the union. It is as much a legal and policing problem as it is a socio-economic issue. So today we're going to delve deeper into the case of missing persons and try and unpack the problem from multiple different approaches. And joining me on the show today is Mr. Javeed Ahmad, former IPS officer and DGP of Uttar Pradesh. Welcome to Police Chowki, Mr. Ahmad.
Thank you, Shri. And as you rightly said, this is a very sensitive and heart-rending topic for those who lose or miss their loved and dear ones. Because let us go behind the statistics and realize that behind each of these 3 lakh people who are missing are mothers, brothers, fathers, sisters, families that are heartbroken because a loved one is traceless. Often, in a state of destitution and absolute, not protected from the evils of society and not protected from the vagaries of living alone in this big bad world. So, a very interesting and important topic for each one of us.
So, Mr. Ahmed, I would like to begin at the very beginning, right? Just to try and understand the problem from a very basic sort of point of view. So, understanding why individuals go missing is, in fact, very crucial for formulating strategies to prevent that from happening, right? So, maybe could you begin by shedding light on, what are some of the major reasons as to why people go missing in India? and how and how understanding this, in fact, decides the kind of approach we want to take in solving this problem.
Let me start my response by saying that a police officer is not the best person to answer the question about why people are running away or they go missing. This is a socio-psychological problem, and I am sure there would be occasion for social psychologists to study it in more detail. I can quote from the analysis of the recovered persons, a small sample. This study was done by the Delhi unit of the anti human trafficking unit of the Delhi police, and their finding, it's a very small sample, but their finding is that in the case of adolescents, love affairs are one major reason why children and this includes both boys and girls, love affair is one important and major reason why children are running away from their homes, especially from urban settings, because this is a Delhi-centric study. The second thing that came out was that the hope and the ambition to have a better life is another very strong motivating factor why young boys tend to run away from their homes in the hope of probably making a better life for themselves in some other city. Having said that, let me once again re-emphasize that this is a very small sample, and the police authorities and the police officers are not the best placed to analyze the very complex, social and cultural reasons why people are running away from their homes. The second point I want to make is that from whatever little literature is available on this, there are two kinds of situations where people run away. One is episodic, where a child may fail in an examination, or he may have been caught stealing or cheating or doing something, or he's done something and his parents beat him up, or the father beats him up, and he runs away. That is categorized as episodic in the kind of literature that's available now. Uh, the other is where the child or even a young adult unable to handle the world and the pressures and the pulls and the expectations that the family and the society has from him. He does not have what are called sufficient problem solving capabilities, and as a result of that, he sees running away as an escape from his situation of being found wanting in handling his day-to-day failures or inability to live up to the social and familial expectations.
Right. So, Mr. Ahmed, from what you pointed out, I think these seem to be instances where an individual, an adult or a child, sort of voluntarily decides that for whatever reason they cannot continue staying where they are with their family or parents and so on, and they feel that running away could probably be a solution to all their problems. But these, in turn, I would put them in a broad bucket of voluntarily going missing or moving away or running away. But what about those instances where there is some amount of coercion, right? Some amount of involuntariness in people going missing. I'm talking about instances like kidnapping, trafficking, maybe even abduction, and so on. So, are those, do they form a majority, or do you think the voluntarily going away are the major cases?
Unfortunately, there's no study which would give us a very useful analysis of the kind of bifurcation that you are talking about. But before we go into the abduction and the forced, removal of a person against his will, let me go back to the earlier issue of why people are running away. A study of young girls who had been recovered and were staying in a rescue home was done in Gujarat, and the findings are that the girls who had run away had suffered a lot of sexual harassment, including at home. There were a number of cases where girls, because they were not so good looking within quotes, were neglected by their parents, and more importance was given to some other sibling who was, within quotes, better looking.
Right.
I'm raising these points because as a society, we should be aware of the kind of trauma that children go through, or young adults, including especially young girls, go through when involuntarily or subconsciously parents indulge in this kind of behavior. The third issue that I would like to highlight is, especially for boys who are in the young adolescent phase, is the neglect. Parents, once again, we are talking about urban areas where parents are busy making a life for themselves, and that could include, people living in very, uh, upper middle class environments. The parents are busy, making a life for themselves, seeing to it that their EMIs are paid, seeing to it that they have enough money to pay for the next holiday or the next car or whatever. And the child is not given sufficient time, and he has a feeling of neglect, of not being available, and of the parents not being available to talk him out of the anxieties that the adolescence brings. So there are studies, not in India but in the US, which show that these issues become very important for a child who is unable to cope with the situation, and he has no one to turn to, and therefore the hope of the assurance of some friend, however vague that assurance may be, or the hope that he will go away and the problems will also go away if he runs away from home. These are the factors that come in. As far as coming back to the forced abduction or kidnapping, um, a large number of these kidnappings and abductions happen because of these so-called love affairs, especially among young adolescent girls, because the boy or the adult, whoever he is, he lures her with the promise of marriage and all that, and she runs away. The other thing is that poverty. I have personal experience of busting a gang of people who were operating on the Indo-Nepal border, who were getting young girls from the interiors of Uttar Pradesh and the interiors of Nepal. These young girls were from very poor families. They were told that they would be taken to Delhi or to Bombay, where they would be trained to become maids or nurses or waitresses or something like that. And the children would, or the girls would be lured into this through some other woman who's already part of this gang, and they would be put on a train. There would be 15, 20 girls together, and there would be one or two adults, including a female, who would kind of herd them into a compartment and take them from Gorakhpur, which is the railhead, to either Bombay or Delhi. So poverty is a very important reason, and also I would like to add that the lure of the big city is something that kind of makes the young adolescent, in a sense, complacent, complicit. I beg your pardon, complicit in this kind of thing. The next point that I would want to raise is that in the Indian semi-feudal social environment, especially in the rural areas, abducting a girl to take revenge is a major issue. The a girl signifies the family's honor, and in a large number of cases, girls are abducted and sexually molested, with the motive of taking revenge on some other family. There have been a number of instances. If you recall, there were two girls about 3 to 4 years ago who were abducted from their homes, raped, and then strung up on a tree in a district called Badaयूं in Uttar
Right.
Pradesh. There are many instances across the country of this kind of behavior. So these are the strands that come out when we go into trying to figure out what are the reasons why abductions are taking place. So there are gangs that operate, and when these gangs operate, some amount of allurement and some amount of threat and use of force comes into the picture.
Right. So one of the interesting things which I came across while researching on this issue was this whole notion of camel jockeys, right? So apparently, a few decades ago, the United Arab Emirates and some other Gulf countries were hotbeds for these camel farms and camel races, and essentially, there was a need for having young boys to look after these camels and operate as jockeys. So a lot of children were trafficked from India, Bangladesh, and other such poorer countries from Southeast Asia and taken to the Gulf so that they could operate on these camel farms. And these children ended up being abused or exploited. Some were even starved because they had to maintain a certain weight before they could be allowed to ride camels, so that they are faster and more agile and so on. So this was the kind of exploitative practice. Of course, the UAE government later banned it, but some believe that this kind of trafficking still continues. So on this bit, I don't have much to add, but I wanted to bring up one more angle, which is quite famous or infamous few decades ago in states of UP and Bihar, and I'm guessing you might have had some first-hand experience of it, which is kidnapping for extortion, right? And this is, in fact, one of the reasons why the governments back then earned the moniker of Jungle Raj and so on, because daylight may anybody and everybody was at risk of being abducted, so that their families, usually business families or established families, had to pay up a large ransom. So what is your take on this? Has this phenomena sort of reduced, or is kidnapping and abduction for ransom and extortion still very commonplace?
Thankfully, the organized gangs that were doing this kind of criminal activity in UP, Bihar, and Delhi, even Haryana, those gangs have been dealt with. In most cases, they have either been put behind bars or have been eliminated. So the older, bigger organized gangs are not very active right now. But having said that, I would like to say that the older organized gangs that were doing kidnapping for ransom, most of them were operating in Haryana, Delhi, UP, that kind of belt. They have been dealt with, either put behind bars or eliminated. And thankfully, because of that, the instances of kidnapping for ransom in terms of numbers has come down. But kidnapping for ransom does continue at a lower scale, in lower numbers, and by new gangs that obviously keep coming up. So it's not that the problem is totally solved, but it has largely contained, thankfully. Just to give you an example, 3 days ago in Kanpur, uh, this was no gang that was operating, but there was a boy from a very wealthy family who was taking tuition from a girl for the last 2-3 years. This lady had a boyfriend. At some stage, they decided that they needed to get married, and to get married, they needed money. So this rich boy, who was the student of the lady, she organized a kidnapping of the boy, and there were ransom calls. And when the ransom calls were traced, and these criminals panicked, they unfortunately slaughtered the child. So the point I'm trying to highlight is that kidnapping for ransom continues to happen on a much lesser scale, thankfully. And the problem I would like to highlight is that these so-called new gangs are more dangerous in the sense that they panic very quickly, and the chances of harm coming to the abductee or the kidnappee are more from these gangs who are novices, so to say, in the crime, than from hardened gangs who are able to handle the pressure in a more professional manner, and the possibility of harm coming to the person if the money is paid. However, unfortunate it may be, the point is that the possibility of harm is less.
Right. So I also wanted to spend a couple more minutes talking about human trafficking, right? Because that's a major contribution to sort of, people going missing. And being moved across places, sometimes even across countries, for exploitative purposes. And most studies show that it is either for prostitution or bonded labor in some very exploitative conditions. How does the police go on about tackling human trafficking, right? Because these are organized, these operate across multiple jurisdictions, and so on. And also, I believe, like, few years back, there was a bill in Lok Sabha which wanted to change the law around human trafficking, but this did not see the light of day. Right now, the provisions under IPC continue to apply for tackling the problem of human trafficking. So, are there any enforcement or legal gaps that this bill was going to fill in, and is it a loss that it did not become a law?
Yeah, as far as police response is concerned, let me start by saying that in 2012, while hearing a PIL filed by Bachpan Bachao, the Supreme Court ordered that where any minor child is missing for more than 24 hours, the police is obliged mandatorily to register a case, and presume that there has been an abduction and proceed accordingly. Now, this was a major step, because what it did was to bring on record every case of missing child that had been reported. Earlier, the number of missing children may have been large, but in most cases, the police would just make a diary note that so and so child is missing, and that child's fate would kind of get lost in the police files. Once the registration of FIR started, more effort had to be made by the police across the country, and that has probably helped in the recovery of children, and also helped in preventing a lot of abductions and kidnappings, because the kidnappers and abductors now know that if a child is abducted or kidnapped, the police is going to register a case and come after them. Now, the other thing is, as far as the organized, human trafficking racket is concerned, the all across the country, the state police forces have set up what are called anti-human trafficking units. These units are located in almost all the districts of the states, and their purpose is they are manned by people who are trained to handle such matters in terms of technological backup and skills and resources. And their job is to ensure that any gang that is operating is kind of identified, traced, and taken care of. So with these anti-AHTUs, anti-human trafficking units, the organized gangs are now very much on the radar of the police. I mentioned to you earlier that the Delhi unit of the AHTU, during a particular period, out of 165 missing persons that had been reported, they were able to trace almost 160 of them. So the success rates are high, and the AHTUs are doing reasonably good work. Having said that, let me add a caveat that in most cases, in most states, anti-human trafficking is not a very high priority, area of work, unfortunately, because the logistical requirements for tracing a person are very high, in the sense that a person may be, maybe missing or abducted or kidnapped from, let us say, Bangalore, and he may travel across states right up to and reach up to Assam or Gujarat or wherever. So, for the local police with very limited resources to trace a person across states, across time, across cultural barriers and all that, it becomes a problem. That is why the lack of resources is one issue that I would like to highlight. That the efforts of the anti-human trafficking units are impeded by this kind of limitation. And I frankly am not. The anti-human trafficking effort is hampered by the limitations of logistical resources, and also the fact that anti-human trafficking involves investigation and inquiry across various states. For example, a person abducted in Delhi or in Chhattisgarh will be transported over different states and land up in Gujarat or in Assam or in Delhi or wherever, with the result that the police teams have to keep tracking them across the country, and that does bring some kind of limitation to their ability to show the kind of intensity in their investigation. The law that you mentioned, which was in the works but has not yet been passed, I am not aware uh, of the provisions of that law. If this limitation is sought to be overcome, it would be a very welcome thing.
Stay tuned to All Things Policy. We'll be right back after a short commercial break. So, Mr. Ahmed, I also wanted to bring in another angle of missing persons, right? And this may not be a general issue, but it can be a very serious one nonetheless, right? And this is of enforced disappearances. So, enforced disappearances basically when individuals are abducted or imprisoned by state actors or state sanctioned organizations, and they remain unaccounted for, right? And they go missing. These cases usually have a political or social undertone as well, and is one of the biggest human rights violations that the state carries out. So in India, we have had a fair share of enforced disappearances, especially in conflict zones, such as during the Punjab insurgency or during various other insurgencies in the northeast, right? And in fact, the Supreme Court has also intervened to order investigations in many of these instances, which has unearthed that police officials or security officials were responsible behind such people going missing. So, can you talk a little bit about this issue of enforced disappearances, and given the complexities around it and how the state itself is a criminal actor here, how can we ensure accountability and justice?
So when the state is suspected to be complicit in the disappearance of an individual or individuals, it is often a matter of politics, and the garb under which all these things are done is national security. Now, as a civilized society and as a country that has a constitution which puts great emphasis on human rights and the rule of law, the first thing that needs to be said is that any act of the state that directly or indirectly encourages or allows this kind of thing has to be condemned in very unequivocal terms. Whether it is in the Naxal affected areas or in the northeast or in Punjab or in Kashmir, these incidents do happen, unfortunately. Except to say that they are highly condemnable. I don't think anything more needs to be said. The accountability that needs to be fixed for such acts of state actors, of officials ultimately. I think time has come for the higher judiciary to very strictly monitor such complaints and hold to account anyone who has been found, complicit in this. There have been instances, for example, in Manipur, there were reports of over 100 deaths, and the Supreme Court appointed a committee, and that committee went into each of those cases, and those investigations were placed before the High Court, before the Supreme Court, and now it remains to be seen how the Supreme Court, views the actions or inactions of the state through its officials. It's very important that each of these instances are not only investigated, but are prosecuted, so that those who are responsible are made to face the force of the law.
Right. Supreme Court had also intervened in one of these matters where a single Manipuri, I think, police official had come forward and confessed to having carried out executions and so on. But yeah, that's a separate debate altogether. And this happened quite a few years ago. I'll link the article in the show notes for our listeners. But moving on, so I also wanted to talk about a little bit on the urban and rural divide when it comes to the case of missing persons, right? So the NCRB had brought out a report on missing women and children in the country, and I quote from the report: in Maharashtra, the maximum number of missing women are from the Mumbai, Pune, and Thane Commissionerate. In West Bengal, Kolkata district has reported maximum number of missing women during 2018. In Madhya Pradesh, Indore has reported a maximum number of missing women. End quote. So, is it the case that missing person cases are concentrated in urban regions? And if so, what are the reasons behind it? And do you think we need a different approach to tackle this urban rural divide as far as missing persons are concerned?
To answer this question of the urban rural divide, I'll go back to the earlier part of our discussion where we talked about why people are running away. People are running away because of problems that they are facing in their day-to-day lives, and they feel that running away is a solution to their problems, whether it is of sexual harassment or of poverty or of boredom at school, or of wanting to have a better life, or of neglect by the parents, either intentionally or unintentionally. These are issues. If you map these issues, the chances are that these issues would occur more in urban areas, where life is fast and people don't have time to look at the signs of personality problems that a child or an adult is facing before he decides to run away. So the policy issue that comes out of it is that at the community level, we need to have more centers or more facilities for people who have a troubled existence in terms of psychological health. They are able to reach these counseling centers where their anxieties and their problems of adjusting to their circumstances can be better, can be attended to, so that they are better able to cope with the realities of urban life. On the contrary, in a rural environment, the chances are that in a village or in a semi-urban kind of situation, everyone knows each other. If there's a problem, a friend or a relative or others would get to know. There would be people who would talk a person out of it. The chances of the community being more important for that person, and therefore he's or the family being a close family, these are the factors that may prevent a person from running away, even though he may not be socially fully adjusted.
Right. So I sort of want to end this chat that we're having by talking about the role of police in a little bit more detail, right? Because after all, police is the first point of institutional contact when it comes to missing persons. Because if we realize any of our relative or friend or anyone we know goes missing, the first instinct, once we are convinced that these people are in fact missing, is to go and report to police. But we have talked enough about this show on how our police is, and law enforcement generally is very overburdened and under resourced. So put it very bluntly, right? It may in fact be impossible for police to trace every missing person simply because of resource constraints and priorities. So in this sort of context, I have a twofold question for you. One, what is the basic procedure for police as soon as they get a missing persons complaint? What exactly happens? And secondly, have police adopted any strategy at institutional levels to tackle this problem, to ensure there is more coordination between the states and the union, and so on?
So, as far as the police response is concerned, I mentioned to you earlier that after the Supreme Court judgment in the Bachpan Bachao case, any missing child over, for more than 24 hours, a case is registered. And once a case is registered, there's a sub-inspector level officer who is normally assigned that case, and it is his duty to, investigate the case and take it to its logical conclusion, which means trying to trace the person. In cases where the missing person is an adult, the police will only register in their general diary that so and so person, resident of such and such place, is missing. Normally, the police would ask the relative or whoever has come to report for a photograph of that person. In today's time, they would probably ask for, in case he has a mobile phone, the mobile number of the person, the family tree, parents, wife, children, whatever, where he lives, that kind of basic data. And increasingly, the all these inputs are fed into a data bank, where now with police taking to technology, the photograph is matched against persons who are recovered in various parts of the country. A person may be missing from Bangalore, for example, but he may be traced in Bombay or in Mumbai, and therefore a match would be possible. So that is the kind of thing that technology has made available. Recently, the West Bengal Police in February of this year launched a AI-based application, whereby they have collected a lot of data about the missing persons, and through AI, even if the photograph that is made available is from a side angle, or is a hazy photograph, they're able to develop it and try to make that match. That is the technology part. But as far as the human effort is concerned, we talked about it earlier. Except for individual instances, the logistical resources do not permit, and that becomes an impediment for the police to go whole hog in each of the cases, as also the fact that the volumes are so high. But before we end this, I want to recall the absolutely fantastic work done by a police officer of Maharashtra called Rajendra Bhosle. Rajendra Bhosle was posted in the anti-human trafficking unit in one of the districts in Maharashtra, and he had 166 cases on his file, out of which he had been able to trace 165. One girl called Pooja, who had been abducted when she was 8 years old, that case remained. It so happened that Bhosle retired, but he says that this girl's parents used to be in touch with him, and he had that kind of motivation. He, even after retirement, he kept tracing her, and after about 8 years, this girl was finally traced And his Rajendra Bhosle, the retired police officer, his wife says that once Bhosle was able to recover the girl, it about 5-6 years, after a gap of 5-6 years, Bhosle had a laugh. And he, for 5 years, he had not been able to even laugh properly, because that kind of commitment he had. And his wife says that after that, he was the most happy man in the world. So that kind of commitment is probably a unique thing, but such efforts are there, and they need to be recognized so that others can emulate it and get motivated by it.
Right, yeah. And that incident definitely highlights the dedication of some of our policemen in tackling this issue. Apart from this, I just wanted to flag that even the government has made an effort in setting up the national tracking system for missing and vulnerable children, and has launched some initiatives under this system to ensure that children who go missing are reported and the information is shared widely. And even the children who are recovered and found are sort of like the information about them is made available, so that the people can, in fact, the ones who are looking for the child can, in fact, get in touch with them and so on. So, Mr. Ahmad, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Police Chowki. Any last comments or thoughts from you?
Yes, before we close this thing about missing persons, Sri, I would also like to point out that a lot of persons go missing in natural disasters and tragedies, whether it's a flood or an earthquake or a building collapse or any such unforeseen incident. And bodies are recovered, body parts are recovered, and people are unable to recognize them. Family members are unable to recognize them. These are also missing persons. I mean, there could be a mass grave which has been found, and there are individuals who are there, and their near and dear one would at least want the solace of burying them or doing the last rites as per their religious rites. So that is another area, and that is where DNA technology and artificial intelligence resources are being increasingly used by the police, including by the Interpol, let me add, where a huge database of missing persons is stored, it is mashed, and a lot of missing persons who are otherwise unaccounted for are found. I highlight this because, as I said in the very beginning, behind each missing person is a family of loved ones, well-wishers, friends, who would like to have a closure. And each small step in that direction is important from the purely humanitarian and humane point of view.
Right, yeah. Thanks for bringing that out, Mr. Ahmed. And thanks once again for joining me on this show today. I hope to have you back on Police Chowki next week.
Thank you.
If you liked our show, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can tune into them on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow IVM on social media. The handle is @IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, if you'd like to dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs, check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaINST or our website takshashila.org.in.